Hello and welcome to Adventures with ADHD, where each week we shine the spotlight on a fabulous ADHDer. And today I have with me Janna Willoughby-Lohr. Now, did I say that right?
You did, actually. Most people don't.
And I just like, oh no, I should have asked before. So welcome. It's great to have you here. So I'm going to just dive straight in with the questions, okay?
Sounds good to me.
So I detect an accent. Well, of course I know there's an accent. So where are you where are you based and what is it you do?
I am based in Buffalo, New York, in the United States, and I own a company called Papercraft Miracles, which is an eco-friendly handmade paper art company. We make magical things out of paper that make people happy.
You do, and I have seen many of them on Instagram, and it just looks so lovely. And it's just a little bit far away, but I guess, do you ship internationally or is it a local thing?
We can ship internationally. It's a little pricey, and there's always things to navigate with the tariffs in different countries and stuff like that. But yeah, we have shipped a bunch of stuff around the globe.
Brilliant. Okay, so what led you to your ADHD diagnosis?
It's kind of funny because I didn't get diagnosed until I was 38 in the middle of the pandemic. And I'd always known that I functioned differently than other people. But so many girls and women go misdiagnosed or undiagnosed with ADHD because a lot of girls and women don't have the typical symptoms of running around like a hyperactive child like little boys typically do when they have it. And girls typically have more like their mind is racing as opposed to their whole body. And so nobody ever considered that it might be a thing for me. And I know it sounds weird, but I started seeing people post things on Instagram and on Facebook and saying, hey, if you think like this, or your mind works like this, or this is your life experience, you might have ADHD. And I was like, what? That makes so much sense, you know? And so I started looking into it more and consulted with my doctors, and they were like, wow, yep, you definitely do have all those traits. You do function that way. And so it's kind of funny that social media, like obviously in so many ways has changed all of our lives, but it really did for me. It was very eye-opening because I kept seeing so many other women, and especially mothers. I have 3 kids. And just seeing so many other mothers who like have their shit together, you know what I mean? And they're like working and their house looks good. And they like, obviously social media has these, people only show you what they want to see. But I mean, people that I actually know, and like my stepmother, who is a fabulous mom. And, she was capable of keeping the house clean and doing this and doing that. And, going through the kids' toys and filtering out the stuff that they need to get rid of and putting away the winter clothes and stuff like that. And I just kept seeing so many people functioning, right? And I was like, why can't I do that? Why do I see a messy house and instead of saying, oh, here's the first thing I should do to start cleaning it, I'm like, there's too many things. I'm going to lay on the couch for 9 days in a row and do nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so yeah.
So how did that make you feel when you just couldn't seem to do the things that people you knew did quite easily?
It made me feel like a shitty mom, really, because I know there's a lot of mothers who don't realize they have ADHD until they have kids.
Yeah.
Because it's a whole different ball game to have to manage someone else's life on top of your own. I mean, like, yes, I have ADHD. I'm not medicated. And I don't want to be, which is totally fine if people want to be. But I know I'm very high functioning without it. And so it's just seeing the way that other people just had their shit together. I was like, how come I would see other moms who would put, like have a whole cycle of toys. So they wouldn't have all the toys out at once. And they would actually like every every 6 weeks would take away all the toys that are there and put different toys out. I'm like, how do you even do that?
Yeah.
Where is this secret stash of organized toys that's somewhere else in your house? Like, what? I just couldn't even wrap my head around, I still have winter coats hanging in my mudroom in my house right now, and it's July.
Yeah.
So like,
That's
and for people who live on the other hemisphere, it's very hot here now. It's very hot. I mean, there's like winter boots like in our laundry room right now. Why? I don't know. I just couldn't get my shit together to put them away. It's just like, doesn't matter.
And there's other things, isn't there? There's other things that are a bit more important than, your winter boots.
And it's just more this, I don't even think that way. Like my brain doesn't say, oh, it's hot out, we should put those away.
Yeah.
Or if my brain says, oh, it's hot out, we should put those away, but I'm not going to. I don't know why I can't. I should put them away, but I can't put them away. I can't do it. And it's been very refreshing to see that it's not just laziness, and that's so hard with my husband's mom was a stay-at-home mom, and she had 5 kids. She does not have ADHD. And she was just, motherhood was very easy for her. And she was like, oh, I just, I have to go to the store. I'll just take my kids to the store. I'm like, you took 5 kids to the store and like nobody died? Like, how did you do that? And so it was really hard because when we had one kid, I could handle it because I wasn't really working much. And he only had so many things. He wasn't getting into stuff. He was small. It was easy to corral the things that he had, whatever. Keep the house clean, remote, relatively. And then once we had 2 kids, and I was like, I don't even know how to do this. And I ended up just being triggered all the time. And my older brother was really rough on me as a kid. And so when I see my oldest, kind of bullying he's now my middle kid, but my youngest for a long time. When I see him kind of like bullying him into doing stuff and like getting him to do stuff and getting him in trouble and whatever, it triggers me like crazy. And now knowing that I have ADHD, I'm like, oh, that's why, like he's pushing my buttons. And I'm like, now that I know about it, I can kind of rein that in a little bit and say, whoa, like he's not actually doing what is being replayed over and over and over again in my head right now.
Yeah. So having that understanding, and that kind of leads nicely into the next question is, so what is different for you now? I know you've talked a bit already about it.
It's definitely changed my relationship with my husband a lot. Because like I said, his mom was a stay-at-home mom. And so he had this kind of picture in his head of that moms can just handle everything. His mom did everything at home. She kept the house clean. She dealt with the kids. She did all the home repairs, like everything, because his dad was always at work. And I never had that experience of my mother, because now that I know about ADHD, my mother passed away a long time ago, but it is now very, very obvious to me that she also had ADHD that was undiagnosed. And I was like, well, that's why she sucked at taking care of her house and all sorts of other things, paying her bills on time and whatever, managing her money, all those things. And so now that I know, and that he knows, he's like, oh, time blindness is a thing. You're not just late all the time. You're not late because you don't care. You're late because you actually can't judge time properly. You always think you have enough time to do something and you don't, and that type of thing. And he's like, how come you go to work in your studio and I don't see you for like 15 hours? I'm like, oh, because I didn't realize that I was doing anything for 15 hours. I thought it was like 20 minutes.
Gosh, so is that where you're kind of hyper focusing on making your wonderful things?
Oh yeah, I mean, my main hyper focus is almost always work, and it was causing a lot of issues with us because especially during the pandemic, my studio's in our house. And so I'm obviously a total extrovert, and my husband is an introvert. So he was fine with being at home with the kids and just kind of doing our own thing and not interacting with other people. But I was going insane. Like, I need people. I need to have new experiences and talk to new people. And I need that constant input to get me out of my head. And he's kind of like, I need you to stop talking to me. And I'm like, I need to keep talking to someone, you know?
Oh.
So I started my podcast during the pandemic because of that. And I was like, I'm going crazy. Why do I feel like I'm going crazy? And then I found out during the pandemic that I have ADHD. Oh, that makes a lot of sense. Why, when the world is terrible, my body and my mind are like, you need to get something good and positive. You need that dopamine. Let's go do something new and fun and exciting. And instead of, I'm totally happy being, you know, secluded with my family. And I wasn't able to enjoy those times that we spent together because I was like, I have to get the fuck out of here. Like, I need to go somewhere else and have new experiences with different people and like get out of my head.
Yeah.
So knowing about it, you know, especially about executive dysfunction and things like that. Like, my mom was a total hoarder and our house was crazy growing up. I mean, I didn't even know that we had wood floors until I was 20 years old because I never saw them.
Oh.
And we couldn't have friends over at our house. I think I had 1 or 2 friends who were allowed to come over to our house because we knew that they weren't going to tell their parents what my house was like.
Yeah.
So to like grow up from that. And so anytime that my house starts to get cluttered, you know, when I first was a college student and, you know, had a dorm room and had my own space that was just mine, that didn't have all of my mom's stuff in it, I definitely was borderline OCD about organizing my things. And that was my main hyperfocus. And I was like, everything in my space has to be, you know, only the things that I want that are important, and everything has a place to go, and how it looks is very, very important to me. And then when I finally got my own house, it was like that. And then I had kids, and it was like, it's the balance. I mean, I can't, you know, that's the kind of the hard limit for my executive function is I'm like, I can handle my own stuff, but when it's my stuff plus their stuff, and all of the organizing and dealing with the kids stuff is always put onto the mom. And I'm like, I can't pick up after all of their things. You know, like, I see their stuff like all over the floor and they make huge messes. And I'm like, that mess is too big for me to comprehend right now. Like, I don't even know where to start cleaning it up. Like, I just want to vacuum the floor and I can't, because there's like 4 hours worth of decluttering and picking stuff up before I could do that. And then I just don't, you know, it's like, oh, I don't have energy to do all those things, so I can do nothing.
Yeah.
And yeah. My husband just ended up, you know, before I got diagnosed, he was like, there's so many things to do around the house. Why are you laying on the couch all day? And I'm like, I didn't know to say, I'm totally overwhelmed by all this. I need you to pick up those things on the floor so that I can do something else. Like, I can't do that. And so it's definitely helped with that.
Yeah. So what did you say when you didn't have the words to say it? What did you say?
I mean, I ended up just saying, like, you know, I'm not laying on the couch because I'm lazy. I'm laying on the couch because I have to.
Yeah.
Like, I need this. This is me taking care of myself. And I can't really explain why that's me taking care of myself, but, you know, I've had a lot of traumatic experiences happen to me in my life. Especially while I was a lot younger. You know, lost my mom when I was 20 years old, became a homeowner while I was in college, 5 states away. Then my dorm burnt to the ground with all of my stuff in it. And, you know, that's just on top of my crazy family structure and growing up in a hoarder house with a totally not functional mother and all sorts of things. And so my husband just doesn't have that, you know, like, his parents are still married to each other and they have a nice house, and like,
yeah.
he has that normal normal childhood that no one has, you know what I mean? And so, I mean, I knew that there are times where I just need to check out, you know, like my brain is just done and I need to take care of my soul, you know, like he doesn't have that, he's not broken on the inside. He's never been broken on the inside. And I mean, I knew from dealing with losing my mom and whatnot that there's times where I'm like, I just have to rest emotionally.
Yeah.
And you know, he's I wouldn't say not emotional, but he is distanced from his emotions a lot. Like he's a very rational kind of person. So he sees me laying on the couch for a whole day watching reruns of Law and Order, and he's like, "Why are you wasting your day like this?" And I'm like, "That's not wasting my day. I mean, I'm putting myself back together on the inside." And he's like, "What even is that?"
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Recharging those batteries.
mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. So, they often say, don't they, that ADHD and other conditions can give us superpowers. So what strengths have you got that you could possibly attribute to ADHD?
Oh, creativity. Crazy amounts of creativity. Which as an entrepreneur and an artist obviously are very good, you know, traits to have. But it also helps me to, when things do go wrong, especially, you know, business wise, it's super easy for me to just say, oh, I'm going to hyper focus on this new thing instead. Like, who cares about that bad thing? Whatever,
Yeah.
that's over now. And I just hyper focus on a new thing. And say, well, that thing didn't work, next. And it helps my brain to kind of shift back and forth. But I think also being a mom that's an entrepreneur, it helps with that too, because you're constantly having your focus pulled in different directions as a mom. But being a mom that also is trying to run a business, you're like, okay, well, I did want to work on this for 2 hours, but now I have a kid that, you know, needs something, and you have to stop what you're doing and attend to that and then get back to where you were. And so I think having a brain that is used to kind of bouncing around from this thing to that thing and multitasking, I think is easier for me. And it's just weird to think like, okay, well, I have this condition that makes my brain want to seek out new fun experiences and avoid anything that's unpleasant. Which in some ways can seem really great, right? As a superpower. And it's just, I have a lot more mental energy than a lot of people do when I'm doing something that I enjoy. And, you know, there's some people who are artists who are not ADHD, and they're not super into sharing their art with the world. You know, they're much more concerned about what other people think about it. And I'm just like, look at this fun stuff I did. Oh, and I like get so excited about it. And being a business owner, and especially a business owner that makes art, you have to be your own biggest fan out in the world, right? Like, no one is going to care if you don't care. And so being a really kind of hyperactive, excitable person, it really lends well to being on social media in general, because I'm just like, hey, look at this cool thing I did, check it out, blah, blah, blah. And people are like, oh, that's interesting. You know, it's different than the, I guess I made this thing, whatever.
Yeah.
Maybe you might like it. And I'm like, no, this is cool, check it out. You know, I'm like, I get very, very excited about things.
Yeah, that's infectious, isn't it? Like you say, you love it, people are going to take notice and love it too. And of course they do. It's amazing stuff. And, you know, do send me your details so that I can put it in the bio of this, because people need to see your amazing stuff. So yeah, creativity is, I think every ADHDer I've met is creative in some way, and it's wonderful, isn't it, when you're kind of in that creative flow.
It is. And I think it also for growing my business as a mompreneur, where I don't really get to leave my house that often. I don't get to do a lot of traveling and things like that. I kind of have to grow my business via social media, even though I make physical art that you should hold with your hands. And I think that the number one key to being able to grow your business via social media is authenticity. And when you have ADHD, you tend to have no filter. You think some shit and it just flies out of your mouth. Like, well, that happened.
And
your brain moves so much faster than or your mouth moves so much faster than your brain can keep up with or whatever. And you've had these full conversations in your head, but you didn't say any of it out loud, and you just jump into the middle of a conversation and things like that. So I think that kind of lends well to, making short, quick content and things like that. You say, hey, this is me, this is my real life, it's messy as hell, and I'm a real person by myself,
Exactly. Brilliant. So do you have a funny story or situation that has can be again related to having ADHD?
Funny story by having ADHD. I mean, I guess it's not necessarily a funny story, but being diagnosed with ADHD helped me to realize that my son also has ADHD. My oldest son.
Wow.
And he's 7 now. And, learning about it and then saying, oh shit, that's where he gets that from. Why does he, as soon as he wakes up in the morning, is wide awake and very loud and doesn't know how to whisper or close the door quietly. And if he's awake, everybody's awake, because he climbs in the bed and he's annoying to people and he's poking people and he's like, hey, wake up, play with me, I need attention, blah, 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 blah. And it became really apparent during COVID when he was supposed to be doing virtual kindergarten. And me having ADHD, trying to make him having ADHD sit at a table and pay attention to a teacher on an iPad that he's never met in real life. It was really difficult. And I just, every single day, I'm like, he's got to have ADHD. Look at him. He can't even sit still. And he drums on everything. Every surface that he gets, he's just sitting there all the time, just drumming. And I'm like, oh my God, he can't sit still. He can't. He doesn't know how to sit there and not make noise or move his body. He has to do that. So whenever we were trying to do virtual kindergarten, I'm like, okay, man, the teacher's reading a story. You can get up, dance around. You got to do something, because, we can't coexist on this where we spend our whole entire morning me screaming and forcing him to sit in the chair and hiding off the camera so his teacher can't see me holding him down in the chair and whatnot, because I didn't want to be the mom that sucked, and I didn't want him to be the kid that failed kindergarten because his mom sucked at teaching or whatever, so
yeah.
The day parties in the break where I was like, I can't sit here either, man, let's move around.
Yeah. Oh, there's so much added pressure, isn't it? Oh,
yeah. But I think it's made me a better parent. Knowing that I have ADHD has made me a better parent, because now when my son comes in the morning and he's annoying the crap out of the rest of us, I mean, it doesn't really annoy me unless I'm still asleep and he's poking me or whatever. But once I'm the same thing, once I'm awake, and I'm very oh, hey, it's a whole day, blah, blah.
Yeah.
I'm a very tired mom, so I don't feel real awake, but my brain is going. As soon as my eyes are open, my brain is going.
Yeah.
And my husband's he's all grumpy and he's like, hey, stop being annoying. Why are you being annoying? And he's yelling at him for being annoying. I'm like, it's okay, bud. Just go do something in the other room. You're a bit much for us right this minute, and it helps me to not just be annoyed by it.
Yeah. So that real understanding of why he's like that.
Yeah. And it made me realize that when I tell him go clean your room, he's like, I can't clean a whole room. You know, I have to give him one small specific task, like go pick up the Legos.
Yeah.
And then I have to keep reminding him, go pick up, you were picking up the Legos, don't forget. And he's like, oh yeah, that's right, I was picking up the Legos, you know, and because he gets totally distracted and his brain is moving 100 miles a minute and he's already done in his brain, he's done picking up the Legos and he's distracted and interested by something else. And meanwhile, you know, his brother, who's not even 5 yet, doesn't have ADHD. And it's really, really obvious that he doesn't have it. And he's just like, dude, you were supposed to clean up the Legos. Like, what do you mean you don't know how to clean up the Legos? You just put them in the box, you know? And he's like, why can't you do that? You know, why can't you do it? I can do it. And I'm only 4, you know? And, you know, that it's a really stark difference between the two of them.
Yeah.
They're just very different. I mean, he can't, even just doing his homework, like he'll sit there and, you know, I'll say, okay, write this word or do this math problem or whatever. And he'll look at, there's a picture on the page. And instead of writing what he's supposed to write, he's telling me a whole story about whatever he's thinking about this picture on the page. And I'm like, you slow your brain down, man. You only wrote 2 letters. Like, back it up, okay? You're still over here. I know your brain is way over there and you've thought about 100 things in between when I told you to write the word fork. And he's like, fork, that sounds funny. That sounds like the number 4. And then he all of a sudden is writing the number 4, you know, and things like that. And meanwhile, his brother is like, oh, you want me to write fork? Okay, here, fork. You know?
Yeah, and it's that brain that just is making those connections all the time. And it's so great that you understand him. That must be great for him, you know, now growing up like that and knowing that it's okay.
Yeah, and I think it's been really good for him, for us, for his teachers and everything, to know that he has ADHD, to learn it when he's in kindergarten.
Yeah. And
say he needs structure. You know, he's gonna have a hard time staying in his chair. He's gonna be that kid that's tapping his pencil on the desk, or that gets distracted because he sees horses out the window of the school. You know, like, you got to put him in a chair where he can't see out the window because he's going to be distracted by that. But his creativity is just like infinite, especially, you know, his hyperfocus is infinite, especially if it's about animals or something like that, you know. And they're trying to teach him about, you know, verbs. And he's like, oh, did you know there's this really great place to go get snakes?
Brilliant.
So it's just, it's really interesting to be able to know that, you know. And like, I think if I had known when I was a kid, my school would have been so different, you know, like my schooling would have been different. I did well in school, but I did well in school because I did everything. You know, I hyper focused, and it was like, oh, they want me to do homework? Okay, I'll do all the homework. And they would assign a project that says, choose this or this. And I'm like, I can't choose that or that. And I would do both projects because I couldn't decide. And, you know, there were times where I remember I did both projects and they failed me because I didn't make a choice. And I didn't just do one. And I was like, what do you mean? Why is this not better to do more? You know?
Yeah.
And so like, I remember in first grade, I got in trouble for making faces while I was reading.
Oh, come on.
But like, I don't even know that I do it. I still do it now when I'm really concentrating and working hard. Like, I scrunch up my face and I'm like while I'm doing stuff, my face will hurt after I'm working for many hours at a time. Like, I won't even realize it. Like, all the muscles in my face are like while I'm working on stuff. If you go on my Instagram and you see like videos where I'm working for a long period of time, like, you'll see me do it. I distinctly remember the teacher saying like, don't make faces during reading. And I'm like, what are you I'm just reading. Like, what? And I didn't realize that in order to sit there and read, I have to physically like make myself sit there and read and not do other things.
Yeah, you wonder what's up with that teacher though, why they had an issue with you making faces while you were reading.
I don't know. I mean, I think she probably didn't realize that it was unconscious. She thought I was just sitting there, making faces in the class. She just thought I wasn't paying attention, but I was just concentrating really hard.
Yeah, gosh, the complete opposite.
Mm-hmm.
So finally then, what would you say to someone who's just been diagnosed and is a bit lost or confused?
I just tried to think of all the ways that like the way that I functioned all of a sudden made sense to me. Like there was a reason why I sucked at A, B, C, D, and E. And it wasn't my fault that those things were happening. It wasn't my fault that I wasn't good at doing those things. Because especially, being the mom who the executive function involved in taking several children out of the house at the same time, it's a lot, you know what I mean? You have to make sure that all the kids have all their stuff on, and especially living here in Buffalo where most of the year it's very cold, so say like all the kids need to have boots, they need to have coats, they need changes of clothes, you need to pack all this stuff, and like the mental load to even leave the house is exhausting. And having ADHD makes it so much harder because I'm trying to get all the stuff that I need to leave the house, but then also all the things together that they need to leave the house. And how I like to be able to get that energy to say, I want to go somewhere so bad that I will deal with all of this to get there. And just seeing other moms who are posting like, oh, we're all at the playground, it's 8 a.m. I'm like, how the fuck did you get out of the house at 8 a.m.? Like, I can't do that. I can't do that. But now I know there's reasons why I can't do that. There's reasons why I can tell somebody I'll be there at 10 and it's not happening. Like that they know I'm going to be like 30 minutes late, like every time. And that it's not me just being lazy or me being bad at stuff. It's just like my brain doesn't work well that way. And I think that knowing that there's a reason for it, as opposed to it's something that, people say, oh, why can't you just be better at this? And you're like, I don't have a reason for you. Like, I can't just be better at that. I can't learn to be better at that. My brain doesn't work that way.
Is it about kind of being kind to yourself and knowing that there are reasons and you're not a bad, lazy person, but giving yourself that love? Actually, this is a real challenge.
Yeah. And so many people I know with ADHD overdo it to compensate, especially women who went undiagnosed in school and, had all these expectations, you're super smart. Why haven't you lived up to your potential, right? Because there's so many people with ADHD who have all these great ideas and then get distracted by a new great idea and don't have the follow through to finish what's going on. And typically a lot of people with ADHD have several creative passions and they do all of them kind of half-assed because they're just, oh, I want to do this today. I don't really want to keep doing that today. I want to do this other thing today. And that there's just like this, like a reason behind that, and that functioning that way is a strength in some ways. And, knowing that when somebody says, why haven't you lived up to your potential? You say, well, I have lived up to my potential. I have done, 45% of 7 careers, like that type of thing, instead of, or that they were working on a project and they did it and neglected taking care of themselves for 2 years because they were hyper focused on something, and saying like, you only have everyone only has so much potential to do in 24 hours. And like being gentle with yourself and saying, recognizing the things you have accomplished and just saying, hey, doing anything at all is really hard. And look what you managed to do. When even just little stuff, I've been trying to find ways to gamify doing things around my house, because I do get really, really triggered when things in my house are cluttered or not organized and clean and stuff like that. Like, it's triggering for me as far as childhood trauma, like living in a house that's totally overwhelming, where you can't just clean anything. You know, you need several days of organizing and decluttering before you can do the dishes. You know what I mean? So when there's a whole bunch of dishes in the sink and a whole bunch of stuff on the table and stuff on the floor, and it makes me crazy. So I've started trying to like gamify and say, okay, I'm going to set a timer. Can I get all these dishes out of the sink and into the dishwasher in 4 minutes? And you know what I mean? Like, make it a challenge as opposed to something that's like put upon me.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. Gamifying, making it a challenge. Absolutely. Is there anything else you make a game out of?
I guess it's not necessarily a game, but I do bullet journaling. Ooh. I'm not, you know, my bullet journal is not super beautiful like everyone on Instagram who does it, because I have 3 kids and who the fuck has time for that. But I have figured out a system in my bullet journal that, although I have all of my appointments and whatnot in my calendar in my phone, right? Because you gotta be virtual with stuff like that. I also have a paper calendar, and I draw it out every single week on Mondays, and it gives me either Sunday or Monday, and it gives me time to write it down with my hand. And I do different types of to-do lists, because people with ADHD, we need lists, but it's really hard to make a to-do list because we put everything on one list, and it's, you know, you're trying to get all this to-dos out of your head, all these tasks and who you got to call and what you got to work on and this and that. And you put it all on one big, huge fucking list. And you're like, how can I call this person and then finish this project and send those emails and do this and do that and do this and do that? And I figured out that I make lists of people I need to contact and tasks I need to do, projects I'm working on, and what's coming up next week. And every single week, as I think of something, that somebody I need to call or send an email, I put them on that list. And so because they're separated out, and I know that I do well with the Hyperfocus, I'm like, oh, here's my list of who I need to contact. I'm going to sit down and I'm going to contact all those people in a row. Done.
Right.
And, you know, if I have tasks, like I got to, you know, pick up the kids' medicine from the store and drop off this thing and clean the bathroom, what, you know, like those are all on the task list. I'm like, I can handle those one at a time. Which projects do I need to finish this week, or are we working on? Those are over here, you know, and it gives me a way to kind of compartmentalize those things and say, now that I have them separated out, they're not sitting, running around in my head, I can draw out my calendar for the week and put in, you know, write in where I have appointments, and then say, here's all the stuff I have to do. Where might I have time to do these things that I have to do this week? And then I can kind of pencil them in on the day and say, oh, that day I have 4 Zoom meetings in a row. So I'm not also going to be able to sit at my computer and do lots of editing and whatever in between, because I'm going to go nuts. What should I do that day? In between those meetings, I should go run those 2 errands, because it'll get me out of the house. I get time to go do that, you know, and it helps me having, you know, crazy time blindness to say, here's my meeting. I have another meeting in 3 hours. Realistically, now, which of these things can I try to do in between? As opposed to saying, oh, I'm going to sit here and call everybody and then realize that I missed 2 meetings, you know?
Yeah.
I was not focused on that.
That is such a good system that you've kind of worked out and made it work for you. And that's the thing, isn't it? We have to personalize our systems. It can't just be, I've got ADHD, do this. And the fact that you separate them out into categories, then you're taking that time, which is so important, to say realistically, how long is this going to take? How much energy is this going to take? This is, you know, this is stuff that other people really could benefit from. So thank you for sharing.
Yeah, it's really helpful too, because a lot of times, especially being a mompreneur, you go to look at your daily schedule and you're like, I got 15 minutes right now before I have to do something else. What can I realistically do in 15 minutes? And if you don't have that written down somewhere, an option of different things that you could be doing this week, a lot of times if I'm like, damn, I'm so overwhelmed, I've only got a little bit of time, blah, blah, and I'll waste the whole time trying to think of something to do. Now I just look at my book and say, oh, I could do that right now. And I just pick something.
Yeah.
And after writing it down with a pen, it's so different. I mean, it's scientifically proven that when you write something down physically with a pen on a piece of paper, it stays in your brain in a way that it won't if you type it or put it in a phone.
Yeah.
I could look at my calendar in my phone 150 times, and as soon as I close it, gone.
Yeah.
It's gone.
Yeah.
But if I write it down on a piece of paper, I can picture everything I wrote on that piece of paper hours later and say, oh yeah, that's right. I need to call this person, and this person. I can even see it if I can't see it.
Yeah.
So it's helpful for that, where you have that kind of indecision. You're like, oh, well, I have to do this thing in 3 hours. I won't be able to do anything between now and then because I don't want to miss that appointment, whatever. But this kind of gives you options of feeling accomplished. And, when you have ADHD, if you waste your whole day trying to figure out what you should be doing, you're going to feel like shit after that. You're going to be like, damn, I'm such a loser. I didn't do the things I was supposed to do today.
Yeah.
But if you're like, oh, look at all these things I crossed off my list today, I did those, I'm feeling good as hell. And like that energy will carry you through the rest of your day when you're not working anymore. And you are kind of unstructured. It gives you, you're not overwhelmed when you're done because you feel good from all that dopamine, like, oh, yes. And I am totally guilty of putting things on my list that I already did and then just crossing them off.
Good. Yeah,
I'm like, oh, take a shower. Shh, done.
Yeah. You've got to though, haven't you? And like you say, that kind of carries you through in a good energy rather than, oh, I didn't get anything done. I love that. I'm going to write some things down that take kind of 10, 15 minutes. Because when I do have that, I'm like, oh, I'll just sit down and look at my phone then. And it's, there are things I could be doing off of my list. So. Oh,
yeah. Sit down and look at my phone. Oh my God. It's just like a wormhole of distraction. I'll go to open my phone to send someone an email and I realize that I'm like, been researching something on Google for 2 hours. I'm like, and I never emailed that person because I opened Google instead of the email. I'm like, I didn't mean to do that. What? Why? What time is it? Like, damn it. I didn't plan to do that. So.
Yeah, no, great. So thank you so much for sharing so openly about your journey and for those amazing tips as well, which I know will help people. Help me. I'm gonna apply a bit more of that. I'm quite good, but there's always room for improvement, isn't there?
Yeah, I'll take a picture of the spread that I draw out in my book every week, and I'll send it to you so you can put it up and show people. Really super simple way to kind of organize your week at a time, and it only takes me 5 minutes total to draw it up and fill it out. Because a lot of times people see bullet journal and they're like, oh, I don't have time to do that. And for me, since it saves me so much time and helps me be so productive that it's like, yes, I have to sit down and stop doing other things in order to do this, but man, it is so worth the 5-10 minutes it takes to do it every week.
Exactly. And that's the key, isn't it? Training your brain, and it can be done. So thank you so much for being my guest on episode number 10. And I'll let you know when it goes out.
Awesome. Thank you. I'm glad to be here.